Welcome back, everybody. It's Tuesday, July 30th, 2024. Now, born on this date in 1946, the late NASCAR driver and member of the Alabama gang, Neil Bonnet of Hueytown. Today is National Father-in-Law Day. Treat your spouse extra well. Isn't that the best gift you can give right there? Today, we'll talk about DEI at Auburn. Now, I mean diversity, equity, and inclusion, not Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. Now, if you don't have a NASCAR background, that sounds dumb, but that is an ingrained acronym around here. By the way, Dale Earnhardt Incorporated was once a race team, and now it's a museum up there where some of my buddies live in Mooresville, North Carolina. Back on track, we'll talk about DEI at Auburn, traffic speed cameras that have been lying to us. I've said that about radar guns before. Colin Powell's widow, Alma, has passed away. For animal lovers among us, now's a good time to see a pygmy hippo calf. And Jonathan Sobolewski is going to tell a 1930s era Alabama story about a man who got in trouble for going on a drunken elephant ride. Now, you can read that grammatically either way because both he and the elephant had a little prohibited whiskey before the ride. My name's Ike Morgan, and we're down in Alabama. Auburn University is the latest state college to announce the closing of its Office of Inclusion and Diversity, reports AL.com's Rebecca Griesbach. Now, 5 institutions have made or announced the move just months after a new state law was signed by Governor Kay Ivey that bans DEI programs in state colleges. The law requires that colleges be in compliance with the law by October 1st. Auburn officials say its office will close August 15th and that staff will be reassigned to other departments. AU has reported that it was spending around $1.8 million on the diversity office. The city of Tuskegee's traffic speeding cameras have drawn complaints and even a lawsuit in the months since they were installed. And now the Associated Press and CBS 42 are reporting that the city has promised full refunds to those who were fined. Ticketed drivers number in the hundreds. The lawsuit claims the cameras incorrectly identified speeding cars. So Tuskegee Mayor Lawrence Haygood said that all those fined will get their money back. Use of the system from the German company Genoptic has been suspended. Alma Powell, the widow of retired General and former U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell, has passed away, reports AL.com's William Thornton. She was born Alma Vivian Johnson in Birmingham, where she attended Parker High School. She and her husband honeymooned at the A.G. Gaston Motel in Birmingham, and she lived in Birmingham again while her husband was deployed during the Vietnam War. She studied speech pathology and audiology. Colin Powell died in 2021 of complications with COVID-19. Alma Powell was 86 years old. If you've never seen a pygmy hippopotamus, and odds are you haven't, now's a good time to see a brand new one. Pygmy hippos are an endangered species. The World Conservation Union estimates there are fewer than 3,000 living in the wild. Now, home for them is in West Africa, but they're known to breed well in captivity, and they're not nearly as big as the hippos we're familiar with. The pygmies grow to only a spry 400 to 600 pounds. AL.com's Mike Kaysen reports that visitors to the Montgomery Zoo can now see a 5-month-old female named Rhonda. She's with mom Asali in the pygmy hippo nursing suite. Other adult pygmies are in their exhibit at the zoo's Africa realm. 6 other pygmy hippos have been born at the Montgomery Zoo over the past 8 years. They've all been placed at other zoos. Hey, if y'all stick with us a minute, Jonathan Sobolewski is going to tell us about that drunken elephant ride. There's a statue of that elephant today, by the way. We'll be right back.
This is a story of a guy who got arrested and spent the night in jail after driving drunk. Not normally a story worth telling, except the thing he was driving was an elephant. And the elephant was drunk too. So it's 1934 in Birmingham, and Miss Fancy, the Indian elephant, is the prize animal of the Avondale Zoo. To this day, there's still a statue of her at Avondale Park. Miss Fancy has been taken care of for years by a man named John Todd. And one afternoon, Miss Fancy was having an old injury flare-up, and Mr. Todd had to give her medicine. But on the advice of a veterinarian, Miss Fancy would only take her medicine if it was with a quart of whiskey. That was weird enough on its own, but this was during alcohol prohibition. So where was the zoo getting the liquor? That's easy. When the city would confiscate liquor, they just give it to John Todd for the elephant. That's right. In a time when no one could legally get alcohol, Miss Fancy and John Todd had a government hookup. So when Miss Fancy's injury flared up, it seems Mr. Todd took advantage of his situation, and then he and his homegirl Miss Fancy decided to go for a joyride. He rides the drunk elephant down the street in Avondale, and every once in a while he stops to do some tricks with Miss Fancy for the passerbys. Anyway, after a while, this started annoying motorists because it was backing up traffic, and so the police were called. When the police got there, they arrested Todd, put him in the car, and then try to get Miss Fancy to follow the car back to the zoo. Only the elephant only listens to John Todd. So the only solution was for the cops to put Mr. Todd back on top of the drunk elephant so he could ride her back to the zoo. In the end, Miss Fancy went back to the zoo to sleep it off, and John went to jail for the night. But there's a happy ending. John Todd's kids told the court he didn't seem that drunk to them, so the court let him off with no charges and everything went back to normal. The moral of the story is, don't drink and drive, no matter what you're driving. I'm Jonathan Soboleski for AL.com.
Thanks, Sobo. People like to put down prohibition, but you got to admit it's added to our colorful history. That story doesn't exist without prohibition. Beer runs wouldn't have been a thing without prohibition. Hal Needham would have had to find a different reason for Burt Reynolds to drive around with Sally Field. The association of sweet iced tea to the South was under the influence of prohibition. That was your cocktail on the lawn on summer Sundays. And to bring my asides in this report full circle, NASCAR is the greatest racing sport this side of swamp buggy racing because of moonshiners. See, the North got the rise of the mafia and the South got NASCAR and sweet tea. Thank y'all so much for listening to us. If you don't mind and haven't already, feel welcome to leave us a rating and maybe even a comment on whatever podcast platform you use. Also, if you have a friend who's always saying, "Where can I get the news these days?" let them know we shoot straight here. Y'all enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. We'll be back bright and early in the morning. Until then, come on by and see us on the internet at al.com.